This lemongrass chicken vermicelli bowl is probably the most delicious, freshest tasting bowl I could possibly think of. The chicken is juicy and savory, the vegetables are tart and fresh, and the noodles give it this really, really nice backbone. Here's how to make it. This dish can work really well as a weeknight meal with one little caveat: the pickled carrot and daikon. These do take a little bit of time to fully develop, but once they're done, you'll have a batch of beautiful pickles ready to pile on sandwiches and bowls. For my money, I prefer more carrot in mine, mostly for color purposes, and we always have a bunch of extra carrots lying around, so I like a lot of them here. We want these to be in little matchsticks, so it's easiest to do that with a mandolin if you've got one. If you don't have one though, it's easy enough with a knife and a cutting board. Let me show you how. Peel the carrot and break it down into sections that will make sense for eating. So think about how long you want your pieces to be. If you want them really long, go for it, but something like a couple inches is good here. From there, slice them down into planks, and it's always a good idea to square one edge so the carrots don't roll around. Once they're into planks, stack them up and then slice them down into a fine matchstick. You can place these in a bowl for now. The same technique can totally be used for the daikon, but I'm just going to use my mandolin for it. So cut it down into the size you want, peel it, and then run it through your mandolin. Be sure to have like a glove or a cover because people tend to cut themselves on mandolins all the time, so just be aware of that. Now that these are broken down, give them a good long wash in cold water. The water needs to run clear here so the carrot juice doesn't stain the pickling liquid. I like to season the veggies with a hefty pinch of salt here to draw out any extra water. This water that's leaving the vegetables is going to be replaced by the pickling liquid, so it's a nice way to deeply season the pickles, and it happens faster this way. Let this sit for 15 minutes so the water can pool out of the veggies. Once that 15 minutes is up, there should be a bunch of liquid sitting at the bottom of the bowl, and that's your sign that the salt did its magic. Wash off the salt and any liquid that came out of the vegetables, and then our job now is to get these as dry as possible so any extra water doesn't dilute the pickling liquid. Place the dried veggies in your final vessel, and we'll come back to these in a minute. Speaking of pickling liquid, this is really straightforward to make. It's a classic mix of distilled white vinegar, water, white sugar, and salt. Do 150 grams of distilled white vinegar, 200 grams of water, 100 grams of white sugar, and 20 grams of kosher salt. You can heat this on the stove to melt the sugar and salt, but it doesn't have to like come to a boil or anything. Once it's hot and everything's melted, pour this mix over your veggies and be sure to mix them up so that every piece is covered in the liquid. This needs to cool before sealing it and placing it in the fridge. Once it's cooled, it's ready to use, so this could be ready within the day, but the flavors get better with time in the old chill chest. They get more tangy and sweet as the time goes on. Alright, so the pickles are taken care of, and now we can make the marinade for the chicken itself. This is where most of the savoriness comes in the dish, so it's really important. The lemongrass is sort of the star here, with lime, shallot, and fish sauce all playing their parts perfectly. Lemongrass is most easily found in these stalks, which can look slightly daunting, but they're easy to manage once you know how. This whole thing is really woody, so you have to make a call if you want to try breaking it down or not. You can get more flavor out of it from breaking it down, but even food processors struggle to get through the fibers. No matter what, you're going to need to remove the outer dry stalks and then the top dry greens. Once you've gotten to the more tender interior, you could totally microplane this and end up with pieces that'll cook onto the chicken. The microplane itself does do a pretty good job at breaking down the fibers. For me though, I just prefer to cut them into large pieces and then break them up with the back and side of my knife. This lets that really nice citrusy flavor permeate out, but it also makes them easy to remove before eating. That way you don't have to worry about getting a bunch of fiber in your mouth that didn't fully break down in the cook. Toss the bruised lemongrass stalks into the bowl. Shallot is another flavor punch here, so slice up one large shallot and place that in the marinating bowl as well. Grate in 2 cloves of garlic here, and then for the liquids, add 40 grams of fish sauce, 40 grams of lime juice. Fresh is always going to be better here, 20 grams of soy sauce, and then 10 grams of honey. I made this without soy sauce, and I thought the whole dish was missing a little bit of like a middle note. The fish sauce and the lime juice are both like sitting up here for me, at least on the palate. The honey's kind of down here with like a lot of sweetness, and I wanted something to bridge the gap, and I think soy does that really nicely. I don't know if that makes sense. That's just kind of how I think about flavors, but you may think about it differently. Now for the chicken, this is 1.5 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken thighs. In my opinion, the perfect vehicle for a marinade like this. There's enough fat on the meat for it to stay juicy, so we can cook it long enough to brown the marinade at a lower temperature. That's how we get beautiful brown flavor without burning the whole lot. Mix this around so the chicken is evenly coated, and then cover it and place it in the fridge. This should be ready to go within about 30 minutes or so, as too much time is going to overdo it on the flavor. There's a lot of salt and acid in here, so just be mindful of that. This is the perfect time to prep the last few things for our bowls. Arguably the most important flavor component to the dish is the seasoned and prepared fish sauce. This is that supercharged liquidy sauce you get with a lot of Vietnamese food. Making this is super simple. It's mostly fish sauce, lime juice, water, and sugar. The ratios are easily adjusted to match your audience's palate, so keep that in mind. Start by mixing 15 grams of sugar with 60 grams of warm water, To that, add in 20 grams of fish sauce along with the juice of a lime and a sliced serrano or Thai chili. Just something to bring some heat here is really nice. Use what you can find. 1 clove of grated garlic can go in if you want that garlicky flavor, which I really like. Now you're gonna need to taste it to see where it's at. Is it salty enough? Is there enough sugar or lime juice? Do you want it more diluted? Do you want more chili? These are all really important questions to ask and work through. Once it's good to go to your taste, you can set this aside while we get the final touches ready. For me, I really like a few chunks of cool, refreshing cucumber in the bowls. Simply chop a mini cucumber into smaller pieces and season them with a pinch of salt so the extra water can be drawn out. Set those in the fridge for now. Lettuce is a really important piece to the refreshing puzzle here, so roughly chop some washed romaine hearts. This is gonna mix with the vermicelli and the prepared fish sauce to create those like delicious punchy pockets. Pull and wash a bunch of cilantro leaves and mint leaves for extra pungency. I just want everybody to know that I did use real cilantro here. This is not fake parsley cilantro, this is real cilantro. I thought it was important. I tried to do it and I had to pick it out because my taste buds just can't, it just like absolutely blows out my taste buds. I'm sorry, cilantro lovers. I tried. I really tried for you. The base of the bowl is the vermicelli, which are these rice noodles that have a really nice texture even when chilled. That's perfect for our case because this is often served at room temperature or even cold. Prepping these is as easy as boiling them for 8 minutes and then washing them in cool water until the cooking process has totally stopped. After that, these can just pretty much sit until we're ready for serving. This is great because they're gonna stay without the texture degrading at all. All of the components are ready to go. Now we can cook our chicken. For any marinated thigh meat, this is how I prefer to cook them. Essentially, I simmer them first so that the inside is cooked, and then I turn the heat up to cook off the marinade liquid. This way the inside's cooked without the outside sugar burning. Sometimes if you have too liquidy or too sugary of a marinade, you'll put it in a hot pan, and then the outside gets really beautifully dark before the inside is cooked, and then you're stuck kind of like trying to figure out what to do. How do you finish the cook without burning it? This totally solves that, so let me show you what I mean. Take your marinated chicken out of the fridge and begin heating a large skillet over medium heat. This doesn't need to be ripping hot right now. Add in a touch of oil and then place your chicken in the pan. Let the marinade drip off so you're not adding a ton of liquid, but there's just gonna be some that naturally clings to the meat, and that's good for our purposes. You're gonna notice that this is gonna bubble. We're actually kind of overcrowding the pan, and there's gonna be pretty much zero browning right away. I put all the chicken in at once. I like to flip the chicken a few times during this phase just to make sure that all sides are cooking evenly. At about like the 10-minute mark, the chicken is mostly cooked, and you can turn the heat up to medium-high. The water from the marinade and the chicken will begin rapidly cooking off, and then the sugars are gonna begin to brown, and this is now where the flavor transforms. Be sure to add more oil as needed. At this stage, I like to keep flipping the chicken to make sure that the browning isn't happening too fast on one of the sides. Once the chicken is browned to your liking, you can remove the meat from the pan and let it cool slightly before slicing it into bite-sized pieces. This cooking process gives you a tender, juicy meat, a well-formed crust, and it keeps the burning sugar to a minimum here. To plate this up, pile on those vermicelli noodles and then lay down a nice bit of the cool, crisp romaine. Go around the plate and add in your beautifully savory sliced chicken, those pickles, the punchy, acidic carrot and daikon. We can add on those cucumber pieces that we seasoned, maybe a lime wedge or two, all of those prepped herbs, so your cilantro, your mint, anything you've really got lying around, and then top the whole thing with the prepared fish sauce. Man, this almost just looks too good to eat. Every time you get a bite of the chicken, you're just like hit with savory, salty, fish saucy notes. You just want to keep going in for more. Same thing with the pickles. They just like help bring the whole thing into this really light place. That's super refreshing, really delicious, and absolutely worth your time. With those pickles prepped beforehand, you've got a super easy, really delicious, fresh, and healthy weeknight meal. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing it. I want to give a massive shout out to the amazing people supporting me directly on Patreon through patreon.com/CameronMarty. They get some cool benefits for supporting the channel, and I get to keep making videos like this, so it's a win-win. Now, if you're interested in a steak recipe, you're gonna wanna check out last week's video on steak frites. The technique in there is basically the only way you should be making steak at home, so give that a watch. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers.